The first question that I pose to the four panelists is, what are the knowledge, skill, and attitudes needed by an auditor to improve audit quality? Eileen, do you have any view of this question?
I am a member of the IAESB board. I'm a board member. And I had the fortunate experience of being the task force lead for the issuance of IES 8, which is professional competence for the engagement partner performing the role of auditing financial statements. It was a particularly interesting standard, and I'm happy to announce to you all that at our meeting last week, our board meeting last week, the board approved the release of IES 8. So it's expected that the public will see it after due diligence reviews are performed sometime in December. It'll be released in December. The effective date on it will be July 2016, July 2016. And I'm happy to say, actually, I'm very happy to say, and I'm more than happy to answer any of your questions on it, that we have released it, and it will be going to the public shortly. Now, the objective of the IES 8 is to establish professional competence that professional accountants develop and maintain in their role as an engagement partner. The requirements of that IES 8 is that member bodies shall require the professional accountant performing the role of the engagement partner to develop and maintain professional competence demonstrated by the learning objectives that are included in the IES 8 standard. The member bodies also will have the obligation to have the professional accountants fulfilling this role undertake CPT that maintains and develops their competency. So in answer to your question, Eduardo, I'd like to talk about the competencies, the skills that are needed by the engagement partner on all audits and the engagement team to be effectively for audit quality. What competence, what skills are needed? And we broke it down into three categories. One was technical competence. Second is professional skills. And the third are professional values, ethics, and attitudes. Now, as an example of the technical competence that's in IES 8, the competence areas that we are requiring the engagement partners to be competent in, it would include such competence as the ability to perform the audit, financial and accounting abilities to report on financial reporting. Also, much competences in the area of technology, particularly today with all of the emerging technologies occurring. It is important that the auditor be very competent in technologies, taxation, the changing business environment. We all recognize the extensive and dramatic changes in the business environment, and the professional engagement partner must be competent, particularly in these areas, and also laws and regulations. That's an example of the skills, the competencies that we first noted as technical competencies. The second broader category that is needed is designated as professional skills. And professional skills is a broad range of activities, and they are involving intellectual competencies. And an intellectual competence on an audit would be the ability to establish the audit strategy, the ability to execute that, and to resolve deep audit issues. That's an example of an intellectual competence that's needed. Also, interpersonal and communication skills is also an example of the professional skills that we've designated in IES 8. Interpersonal and communication skills is absolutely, and we all know that, necessary in any business, but particularly as the auditor. They not only have to communicate with their own team, and that communication must be very, very clear, so that everybody understands the scope and the direction of the audit, but the communication with the client, the communication and understanding, and the communication back to the client on all the issues, communications with the regulators. So communication, obviously, is a critical skill for all auditors and also enhances audit quality. The other competencies that are needed are called personal competencies. And an example of that would be an ability to coach and direct and mentor your professionals. Coaching and mentoring, providing that continuously each day on the audit is an important and very critical competence so that your engagement team is particularly comfortable and confident in performing their role and they know exactly what to do. And finally, the other competence that's in IESA that we have laid out, or an example of it, is organizational competencies. And an example of that in an audit would be to make sure that the remainder of the engagement team is competent in their specialties and in the audit as well. So those are the 4 primary areas and the 4 primary skills. Now, broadly speaking, the IES 8, as I said, is directed to engagement partners, those serving on the audits of financial statements, but it obviously needs to encompass the consideration of the overall team and their competence as well. But we do look to the framework for audit quality that's issued by the IAASB, and that clearly goes further to talk about the need for audit quality, and audit quality can only be assured if the auditors display values, ethics, and attitudes, and also have good training and much experience and much specialty, and also have time to do the audit. So again, that's another document, if you will, that encourages the competencies of the auditors well beyond the engagement partner, also resident in all of the engagement teams. Now, regardless of your size of your organization, the ISAs in particular define what an engagement partner is. The ISA 220 also places the responsibility of the competencies of the staff onto the engagement partners. And ISQC 1 also goes further to address the firms and indicates that the firms must also have competent professionals in order to perform their role on any audit. So my final point is that IES 8, as well as the other IESs, which we may talk about further, encourage, demand, require that professional accountants performing the role of an engagement partner and their staff must have a wide range of skills today, more so than ever before, primarily because of the difficult and challenging business environment that we're in, and certainly the financial crisis in 2006, 7, and 8 certainly brought that to light. So the range is wide. So whether you're a small organization, a medium-sized organization, or a larger organization, it's imperative that the professionals that serve within those organizations, sole practitioner or otherwise, have a wide range of competence in order to enhance and improve audit quality.
Thank you, Eileen. We would like to hear Dr. Hans. Dr. Hans, please.
Thank you. Yeah, if I would like to answer your question, and I've only 4 minutes, you said, huh? That's only 4 minutes. That's all, you give me a hard time. And I understand that there is a new document from IFAC. That's the framework of audit quality, and I can imagine that not all of you have read that one. So I will read out loud the first sentence that they start with. That's the financial information should be relevant, timely, and reliable to meet the needs of the users. And then they follow up with the users must have confidence that the auditor has worked to a suitable standard and that an audit quality has been performed. Now, if I would like to do a quality audit, I would like to have some criteria to measure that. And even IFAC said we don't have that. There is no a universal recognition of what a quality audit is. Still, you see it's in all debates. It's in the Netherlands, even in Parliament, and they said the auditors are not living up to the level of quality that they should do. And then I ask people, what's that quality? How do you measure it? Nobody knows. If I read the framework from IFAC, I see there's a lot of input, process and output factors that contribute to the audit quality. Okay, still, if there's an audit and the audit is finalized in the auditor's opinion, how can I measure that the audit did a good job? Is it because I have some doubts on the auditor's opinion, or is the auditor's opinion correct, but he did a lousy job? He wasn't with the client, he just signed off without having done any audit. So that brought me a little bit further when I go to in the IT. And I see the question that I raised myself is the financial statement life cycle at the end? Can you imagine? We don't, in a time frame that we don't have a financial statement anymore? Maybe hard to think about it, but when I started out to be an auditor, somewhere in the 1970s, we had only paper and pencil. We had a financial statement on paper, you had the general ledger on paper, we didn't have computers, and so on and so forth. Still now, we print the financial statement on paper, and we sign off with a normal wet, what we call a wet signature. Shouldn't we go a little bit into the IT part? But if we do that, if we go in that direction, that means that maybe we need some other knowledge about what's happening in the financial industry. For instance, think about data level assurance. Think about continuous monitoring, continuous auditing. Last Friday and Saturday we had the 33rd World Conference on Continuous Monitoring and Auditing at the Rutgers University in Newark. And we debate there continuous monitoring, auditing, and a new way to do data analytics. And shouldn't we look into that one? And maybe it's not something for the auditing standards yet, because we are not finalized there. But if we do some training and we do education in the university, we should teach and give those people the information that they need to be in the business for the next 30 years. That means that they should have a lot of knowledge about the developments in the business industry, in IT. What can you do with it? What's not what is in 20 years from now, maybe in 10 years from now. Like in the Netherlands, we're on this moment speaking about filing a financial statement of all the companies mandated in 1917 in XBRL with an electronic signature in XBRL. And remember, XBRL is not human readable. So the statutory financial statement in the Netherlands at that time will be not human readable. So we have to educate people to understand what it is. And that brings me to the skills of the auditor. Because the auditors, if you go that direction, should have deeply understanding about what you can do with IT to speak freely in the boardroom. Because in the boardroom, they speak about the IT. They are thinking about going into the cloud. And if they ask you, auditor, what do you think about moving into the cloud? What's your knowledge about it? Can you give the correct answer on it? That should be there. Another thing is that what Eileen said about communication skills. There's one thing I always wonder, why auditors are so silent, why they are not with the client and speak up with the client directly when they see there's something wrong. They always wait until we have a management letter and we put it in the management letter so management can read it instead of going out and discuss and debate it directly on the same moment with with management. In one of the standards, I think it's in auditing standard 315, it's telling you that if you see there's a mistake in the internal control, you directly should go to the supervisor or the board of directors or whatsoever to speak about the mistake or a default in the internal controls. Nowadays, asking the engagement teams to do that, they said, no. We document that in the engagement letter or in the management letter at the end. Another thing is that the intellectual skills. So one of the intellectual skills is, and I think there we hit the problem, is that we don't document in full scope our train of thought between all our fact-finding and the auditor's opinion. Now picture yourself to this. I see my mother-in-law, and she is nagging at home. So I get out my pistol and shoot at that. Fine, that's it. Now, yeah, there's something you have to do with your mother-in-law, you know. Now you go in court, and the judge is listening to me, and finally he went to his chambers and come back and looked me in the eyes and he said, you go to jail for 25 years. Do I accept that? I said, no. I would like to know why, how he has measured what I've done, and there were some factors that will give me a little bit, that makes the judge understand why I did it. And I've looked now to the auditor's opinion. And what I see is, in the files, a lot of documentation, really a lot of documentation. And finally, at the end, a clean opinion. And the whole train between it, the whole thought between it, is not documented. Maybe we have to pick up that and learn our people, learn our students to focus on the weighing factors that they have used and the way to come to the auditor's opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hans. I will ask Bel Needless his opinion, please.
Yes, thank you very much. I am speaking from really three standpoints. One is that I served on the International Education Committee during the time that it was transforming into a standards board at IFAC. And I have been working on the consultative group with the United Nations Commission on Conference on Trade and Development. And during the past 2 years, I've been involved in a study, which I'll talk about in one of the other questions, about global accountancy education recognition. At this time, I'd like to focus a little bit different. There are two major studies that took place in the U.S. on the attributes that accounting students should have. One put out by the Big Four accounting firms, and the other AICPA, the American Institute of CPAs, on new CPAs. What should we look for in them? And what I think I see in these things is a change in accounting education. And I should add that I also teach honors auditing, and so I do teach auditors. These two studies have a number of things that are similar in nature: professional judgment, professional skepticism, reasoning and critical thinking, communication skills, problem solving, interpersonal skills. I think all of those we can agree with, but there are three in each category that are different. The Big Four, they talk about corporate governance, and that's a topic that historically has not been covered that much in the accounting curriculum, but the auditors have to be knowledgeable of that corporate governance, and we're getting the idea of integrated reporting throughout the world now, which includes corporate governance as well as financial reporting. They also mentioned leadership skills, and teamwork skills. And when we think of accounting education throughout the world, a lot of it is lecture, problem solving, lecture, problem solving. There's not much emphasis on how you develop leadership skills, teamwork skills. Then I look at the AICPA study and I see research skills. And I say, yes, that's right, because we do not teach students today to memorize thousands of pages of accounting standards. We expect them to be able to go to the codification and find the answers. And even the CPA exam is that way. So research skills is one that should be emphasized, and ethics and professional responsibility and the business environment are two other areas. But what I want to emphasize is how this change is in accounting education from memorizing working questions to research, teamwork, team projects, and communication skills. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abel. Joseph, will you please?
Thank you, Eduardo. I think I will, in this case, look at the question that you posed closely, so that we stay close to the points that need to be emphasized. The question is about improving audit quality. That means we have the necessary foundations, but now we're talking about how do we improve audit quality. We at the United Nations have been working on capacity development from a number of angles, and I'll come to that in a moment. We have also a model accounting curriculum that addresses a number of issues related to this topic. But since we are talking about improvement, what I would like to highlight is that we have also other stakeholders engaged outside of the profession that are calling for improvements in audit quality. A number of regulators, particularly independent audit regulators, are looking at the audit function and analyzing what needs to be improved. So instead of an introspective exercise, maybe we can look at how others are looking at the profession and what they are advising us to take on board. Eileen, you have already raised some of the points, but I will now add a few. A number of times, professional skepticism comes up in the top areas that need focus and consideration. This element needs to be taken in consideration from the training angle as well, from the education and training angle as well. We talk about a number of international standards. Most of the international standards are being written on a principles-based approach. They don't provide a lot of guidance. They give us a lot of room for judgment. So exercising good judgment is very important, and the education exercise needs to take into account these elements. Eileen raised a number of points about advances in technology, business complexity. The business complexity, the counter number, the other side of business complexity is complexity in accounting reporting standards, which means that advancements in the way we do business will also call for a more complex way of accounting and reporting, and therefore we have to train professionals to be ready to adapt to change and to keep the progress with the change. One area that I would like to highlight here, and particularly looking at things from the perspective of the United Nations, sustainability development goals are very important to us, and these goals are very important to the whole world, to us as professionals as well as to the international community. And therefore, elements of sustainability reporting need to be also focused on. And this is particularly from the angle of assurance for auditors. I will stop here, and maybe later on when we have questions and answers, I will elaborate further if needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. Over 125 countries around the world are implementing international financial standards and international standards of auditing. From our previous discussion, it is apparent that the education background of auditors is a key element in applying the international standards of auditing and achieving audit quality. Very few, if any, country systems under which auditors receive their education are the same. There are different cultures, legal systems, and education systems. As a result, comparing audit quality from country to country through mutual recognition is extremely difficult. Member bodies and countries need international benchmark in the area of professional education of accountants to demonstrate to investors and any other interested stakeholders that they have a competent workforce in the area of accounting and reporting. When effectively applied, the education standards will fulfill the role. The education standards provide the element of competency framework of educational of auditors. The resulting competency framework provides a basis of alternative benchmark methodology. Under this alternative approach, professional bodies in each country first compare the education of auditors in their country to the educational standards competency framework. Thus, each professional body will be able to compare the educational preparation of their auditors to those of other countries and identify areas of improvement. The second question that I pose to the four panelists is, how can international education standards improve the quality of education and training of auditors in performing audits and achieving high-quality financial and non-financial reporting globally? Professor Needle, do you have a view on this question, please?
Yes, I certainly do. Thank you. The Global Accountancy Recognition Study that has just been referred to is a study that was conducted by myself and Gert Karaman from the Netherlands. And this study came up because today in a global economy, we have the need to understand the quality of auditing from country to country around the world. And currently, the way that is done in the United States and many other countries is it's basically on a one-to-one basis. Two countries, the United States has a relationship with the audit profession in another country, let's say country A, and so you take the U.S. Audit characteristics and you compare them with country A, and then you compare the U.S. with country B, and then you compare with country C, and you go on, and you could go for 150 countries. It gets to be very burdensome, and before long, you don't know really what the situation is. So the methodology that we proposed was to use these high-quality international education standards as benchmarks for measuring audit quality from different countries. So in effect, you could have the United States say, okay, here's how we match up with the international education standards. Then you could have country A say, here's how we match up with the international standards. And country B, here's how we match up with the international standards. Country C, here's how we match up. So if all countries were to match up with international education standards, then you would have a benchmark by which you could compare the audit quality from country to country, and it would facilitate the development of mutual recognition agreements, which is the reason that the regulators in the United States were interested and were willing to fund this project in the first place. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Bell. Joseph, could you give us a thought, please?
Thank you, Eduardo. On this point, I would like to go back and recall some of the points that the president of IFAC, Warren Allen, was the chair of the education committee at one point, and I happened to have had the opportunity to attend one of these meetings. And when Warren was illustrating to us how important education standards are, he used a three-legged stool as an example. These three legs would be IFRS, ISAS, and education standards. On this three-legged stool, if one of the legs is missing, then you will not be stable, or you have the risk of falling. So this is how important education standards are in the overall setup and framework. But now I want even to raise this above the three-legged approach in this case. And I want to also highlight that from the angle of capacity building, we talked about the uneven situation where countries are not comparable. Well, benchmarking is good in terms of arriving at a defined level of quality. But after benchmarking, you also need to build capacity then. Once you have identified the gap, what do you do to address those elements? And at the United Nations, our Intergovernmental Working Group of experts, in which Bell was one of the consultative group members, Hans, and a number of also participants in this meeting, I see, were members. We have been working towards developing an accountancy development tool. And this tool has three pillars. One of those pillars is human capacity. And education standards are very important components in this pillar. So this is the overall framework that we see the importance of education standards. We have done, analysis in a number of countries using this tool, starting from Brazil, Mexico, Ecuador, Cote d'Ivoire, South Africa, Croatia, the Netherlands, Belgium, China, the Russian Federation, Ukraine, and we have quite a few also in Vietnam. We have quite a few also in the pipeline. So if you are interested, please talk to me later on. We can discuss this further. But that's how we see these tools to build capacity so that countries are able to fully achieve high quality reporting. I would like to also go back to the question, and we are not talking only about financial reporting here, but also non-financial reporting. Therefore, we need to keep that in mind, and we need to have elements in the education standards also that address the non-financial elements. And I think the revised standards reflect quite a number of those aspects, including integrated reporting. Well, those are, I think, some of the points I would like to make now, but later on I would be happy to come back if you have questions also to answer on this topic.
Yeah, we will, Joseph. Thank you very much. Dr. Hans, can you give us your comments, please?
Yeah, as we've seen, Eduardo, you have spoken about the benchmark Bell, and Yusuf have also spoken about the benchmarks. I can show you a slide with a URL on it. If you go to that, to the Global Accountancy Development Institute, we bring there together all kinds of public information that's available about not only the education standards. We make use, like Bell said, of the education standards from IFAC, but we also do it for the auditing standards, the IPSAS, etc., etc. We just started with the education standards, and we put there 40 different countries in. But at the end of the month, we will send out new questionnaires for all kinds of, for the auditing standards as well. But a new thing that I was thinking about is when I go around the globe and I listen to all kinds of educators, I hear different stories. And that is not the thoughts about international education standards. The reason is that you should have explained those standards or work with those standards in the same manner. That's what I thought is there might be, maybe the time is right to come forward with an international education instructor standard and an accreditation of it. So you get then that if you have an accreditation on IFAC, you are accredited to train in accounting and auditing. And you can do that through the different countries or the institutes in the different countries that are a member of IFAC. Another thing is that if I look to the education standards are not clear how to give them the information to the students, how do the education. And I need some more guidance on what are the implications of e-learning modules, or flipping the classroom, or the problem-oriented education. Sometimes you see, I thought it is in ethics, there's a toolkit from IFAC, or there was a toolkit from IFAC related to the ethics. But maybe it should be something to think about in the education standards board. And the last point I made is that the education standards should be a little bit more realistic. And what I mean with realistic is make a combination between the theoretical part of the education and the practical part of the education. Try to combine those two. Look into, if sometimes you are thought to teach something and in practice it isn't used. So make sure there's a link between those two. And then the CPD. We all said there should be CPD. There's a CPD standard. And you have to follow it up. And you have to do something with that. But what should be in that standard? How can I work with that standard? That's not very clear. And I think that if IFAC is, or the board is capable to pinpoint what elements should be in there and do that by year by year, that will help improving the quality. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hans. Eileen, please.
Yes, I think today the IASB has performed a very significant role in many ways relative to quality for the professional accountant and auditor. The IASB, in my view, is the catalyst to bring together many different parties from the emerged country, from the emerging countries, and those in transition, to talk and to provide insights into the advancement of a consistent set of accountancy education and programs. And through that mechanism, views can be shared and consistency can be achieved. Also today, the IASB plays an integral role in actually focusing on the competences that we all talked about this morning, whether it be the technical competences or the professional skills or the professional values, ethics, and attitude. Again, discussing that in an open forum and bringing them through the IESs, I think is critical also to note those which we believe should be in place for all professional accountants and their auditors, and opens the dialogue through the standards to communicate further where further improvements can be needed. But again, it is so critical to discuss, to have them in place so that the bottom line achievement of a consistent set of educational standards around the world and activities and application of those standards are in place. The role in many jurisdictions, I understand the entry into the profession is generally through some sort of a qualification. And so some of the IESs we have in place helps to denote the necessary qualifications for entrance. And the revised IES 1 actually communicates that type of information. And how that helps audit quality is that those who follow IES 1 and some subsequent IESs have a better understanding of the entry requirements for the professional accountant, and also the ability for them to be successful, which gives the public, I believe, a good understanding and maybe even comfort that those entering and complying with the standard have a sound base from which to draw from. The other standards, IES 2, 3, 4 in particular, have also been revised, and in that they talk about the learning outcomes that are expected for the competencies of the aspiring professional accountant. Right? And it's once again important that around the world, reviewing those competencies and the learning outcomes that are expected from those competencies, once that's followed, again, that gives great comfort, understanding, and depth of not only the content, but also the ability for the professional to meet those competencies. And that also gives the public great comfort, I believe, that if it's being followed, that the aspiring professional accountant, the professional accountant, has a good, strong base in the skills that most of us describe today. Then there is IES 8, and IES 8 is about the engagement partner performing the role of the engagement partner, the competencies that they need to maintain and develop. And we all know, again, as we all mentioned earlier today, that the competencies of the engagement partner, the skills of the engagement partner is critical. The ICES has designated the engagement partner as the leader of the band, if you will, the leader of the audit. Right? And under their purview, they have a whole myriad, they can or they cannot have a whole myriad of professionals, which also must be competent. The one skills I don't believe I mentioned, but Joseph mentioned, it's a broad range of skills, but the ones that are incredibly important, as well as the others, are the values, ethics, and attitudes. And in that is the protection of the public interest. And so the engagement partner and the engagement team, as described in the various documents I just talked about, it is imperative that they have those skills, that they understand that their primary job is to protect the public interest. They also must be professionally skeptical. That is a primary responsibility of the engagement partner and the engagement team, and particularly in this very, very difficult world that we're dealing in, very difficult business environment, ones that can often be filled with fraud. It is imperative that that skill be developed, and it's imperative that the world are following the competencies that are suggested here. And professional judgment is the third. It follows on professional skepticism, but the auditor must have incredible professional judgment, just as the professional accountant must, because of the issues that are available today. They must draw upon their skills and their experience in order to come to the right conclusion and document it accordingly. So I say the relevance of the IASs, the relevance of the IASB is so imperative today, and the application of them and following them around the world is a priority, I believe, so that we have a consistent set of outputs, if you will. We have a consistent group of professional accountants globally that are very skilled in their jobs. And as a result, we will increase audit quality as well as increase the credibility of the profession. And my last comment actually relates to some of the comments that my fellow presenters made, and it has to do with the professional programs that are now in the colleges and universities. And I do believe there needs to be incredible emphasis and an upskilling of all of the curriculums in the universities today to deal with the environment that the professional accountants are dealing with. And not just memorizing items, as Belle said, not just understanding and memorizing the standards, but the colleges and universities today must begin to teach those critical thinking skills, must begin to think about teaching greater the professional judgment and professional skepticism, must provide more simulated case studies rather than tutorials and the like. And with that, I believe, we'll have a better opportunity for the IESs to trigger in then and to promote the competencies even further. Lastly, data and analytics. I believe it was Bell that brought it up, or Hans. Data and analytics, the IT skills of the professional accountant in the universities, as well as in the training of the firms, organizations. I know my own firm, KPMG, trains extensively on all of these skills, but the new skills, particularly the IT skills, and understanding not only the IT environment, understanding the internal controls around the IT environment, and understanding how to use data and analytics to get to the most relevant data quicker, to actually be in a better position to analyze that data using your professional judgment and your professional skepticism, is critical that education begins long before they get qualified, but rather as part of the universities as well. And trust me, all of the firms take it upon our responsibility to take that baseline understanding and build out the competencies of all these skills that are needed by the auditor today.
Thank you very much, Eileen, for your comments. Audit quality is best achieved in an environment where there is a support forum, an appropriate interaction among participants on the financial reporting supply chain. I-5 describes the financial reporting chain as the people and processes involved in the preparation, approval, audit, analysis, and use of the financial reports. While each separate stakeholders in the financial reporting supply chain play an important role in supporting high-quality financial reporting, the way in which the stakeholders interact can have a particular impact on audit quality. Examples of those of the interactions with regard with the audit quality are described in this slide. So I move to the final questions for the four panelists. Dr. Hans, please, who are the stakeholders that should be involved in improving the audit quality? What are the roles of these stakeholders? Dr. Hans, please.
Edward, I think that that should be all the stakeholders that are involved in the auditing branch, and I think that you have to start with the users, because still the users are asking us to do an audit. They exactly know what kind of information they need. They exactly know what kind of level of assurance they need, and maybe there will be a time that we don't have only two levels of assurance, 95% reasonable assurance, limited assurance, and maybe it will be in continuum later on. Those users are paying for it and sometimes claiming. So it's better to have them on board and know exactly what they would like to see that we do. The other one is the supervisory bodies. Independent supervisory bodies are overlooking the auditing branch. But still, there should be the trias politica should in place. The trias politica, the separation of the forces should be in place, where you can say that the legislative branch should be performed by IFAC, or the statutory bodies of the bodies in the different jurisdictions. The executive branch will be in the supervisory, and there should also be a disciplinary part in it. That is not the part that should be in the responsibilities of the supervisory bodies, but still should be in the jurisdictions. The third stakeholders are the universities. University or educators should be in the same area to understand what people mean when they are drafting standards. I know for myself, being in the IWSB and in the IASB, it is very hard to draft a standard on global level. You have to discuss and discuss and discuss it over and over again. But you know exactly why you have drafted a standard, what the reasons were when you put those words on paper. And it is better that universities are involved and they can understand it. And they also can say it's possible to translate the standard in a curriculum, yes or no. And the last one are the practitioners. They know exactly what the problem is with the client. They know what the conflict of interest is between the users and the clients. And they can make sure that in the standards there are some lines that can help them to work in the conflict situations where the user wants something else than the client will give you and the auditor has to sign off. Thank you.
Eileen, please, Dr. Hans, thank you very much.
Okay, I've come to know through dealing with IES 8, there are many stakeholders that are involved. And all of those stakeholders are collectively tied, if you will, together. And there needs to be clear collaboration and communication with all the stakeholders that need to be involved in the game of applying IES 8. The key stakeholder for us in IES 8 is the member body. The member body is responsible for the professional competency or requiring the professional accountant who is an engagement partner to become confident, develop and maintain that competence, and also to promote lifelong learning. They also are responsible for having the professional accountant who's an engagement partner undertake CPD in order to accomplish that. So the IES 8 is written to the member body. It is their responsibility. But in this particular IES, there are some other stakeholders that are critical to the success of the member body being able to execute against their responsibilities. The second one I bring up as stakeholder is the firm, the firms, effectively. And effectively through the ISAs, once again, ISQC1, I believe, is the ISA that requires the firm to have sufficient, competent personnel in order to perform the audits. Adequately experienced and competent. So they will be in a position to apply the standards correctly, apply all of the regulations, perform the professional skepticism and the judgments that they are needed. And so it's their responsibility to make sure that they have competent professionals, engagement partners in particular. ISQC1 actually, I'm sorry, I think I misspoke there. ISQC1 is the standard that the firms must follow to ensure that they have competent professionals. So the firm is very, very important in the scheme of the stakeholders, and they need to work together with the member bodies in order to ensure that the member bodies are in the position of executing against their responsibilities. Regulators also play a key role. Regulators play a very key role in certain jurisdictions, some more than others, but they play a very key role in many jurisdictions. They are involved also in the quality control of the environment for which they are in jurisdiction. So the regulators is another very important stakeholder that needs to be collaborative, if you will, in the execution of IES 8. Then we have on a more micro level, we have the actual engagement partner themselves. And as I mentioned before, ISA 220 is the standard that requires the engagement partner to be responsible for the competencies of their professionals that are working on the engagement, and they are allowed to rely on the policies and procedures of the firm through ISQC1 to help them to accomplish that task. So again, another key stakeholder relative to IES 8. Also, those that are involved in governance needs to be involved, and even in some cases, the shareholders are critical to the execution of IES 8 and a critical stakeholder to all that is concerned. There is one final debate, I understand, in many jurisdictions. Should it go beyond those stakeholders that I just mentioned? Should it go beyond such folks included in what we call the audit committees of the firm? The audit committee is a particularly important body. to provide oversight, some independent oversight into the qualifications of, as well as the execution of the audit. And we believe very much that the audit committee members are a critical stakeholder to the overall objective of increasing audit quality throughout the world.
Thank you, Eileen. Dr. Bell, can we hear your last thoughts on this question, please?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate the comment about the audit committees. As a chair of an audit committee of a public company, I am engaged with the auditors quite often in that role. But I want to talk about another group of stakeholders, and that's the students. We talk about higher education and meeting the education requirements and so forth, but it's really the students that we need to be focused on. And this morning's panel, they talked about, what's going on in the big picture going forward. And they talked about, for example, globalization. And they talked about IT. They talked about a lot of things. They didn't talk very much, if at all, about what's going to be the next accounting standard or what's going to be the next auditing procedure. And so at our school, for example, it's unusual in the U.S., but we have the School of Accountancy and Management Information Systems. And we, in terms of data analytics, for example, we've just introduced a course in data analytics for our audit students and for our internal audit track. I have introduced a course which is a capstone course in our graduate program called Global Strategic Financial Analysis. And I tell the students, we're not going to study any accounting rules in this. If you need to know something, here's your access to the IFRS codification and to the US codification. So that's another global thing. We have multiple financial accounting standards. It's really, what do the numbers mean? Professional skepticism, analytics, and problem solving, risk assessment. I haven't heard that word today, but that comes up a lot in our discussions with auditors these days. So let's think about the students and how they go into this system and how their accounting education is going to change in the future. Thank you.
Joseph, please.
Thank you, Eduardo. On this question, let me give you a context in terms of how we have been informed at the UN UNCTAD ISAR. In this area, we, as I mentioned earlier, we developed an accounting development tool, one of the pillars of which is human capacity building. And last year, we conducted a number of case studies on human capacity, looking at the regulatory, institutional, and the human capacity development process, the education element. The country case studies we conducted informed us a lot about the stakeholders and how they need to be engaged and how they need to be interacting in the process. We covered Chile, Tanzania, Denmark, the Russian Federation, and Malaysia. I'm happy to know that one of the authors who helped us on this project, Professor Spina, is here with us. And what we observed is that in a number of situations, the ministries of education are not really closely involved in the education process of accountants, particularly if the education standards, the international education standards are to be embedded in the education system, then bodies like ministries of education, accreditation bodies need to be closely engaged in this exercise. That is at the national level. At the international level, I mentioned earlier, oversight authorities For example, the International Forum of Independent Audit Regulators is engaged in conducting research and analysis, sharing of experiences among the independent audit regulators around the world. And there are elements of education in that would help, as I mentioned earlier, improve audit quality. So it's important to engage with organizations like the Forum and as also IOSCO. One final point I would like to mention is also that we will be looking at audit and audit-related implementation issues at UNCTAD ISAR in the coming year. And if you are interested, please, talk to me during the coming days or at the end of this meeting. We would be conducting similar research exercise on this topic, and we would hope to feed that information also to the board to enable it to identify stakeholder engagement as a way forward. Thank you, Edward.
Oh, thank you. Yes, please, Aline.
Something like I'd like to add, and I think it's very interesting to those of you who are in firms or those who are representing universities and the like, or even institutes and member bodies. What Belle brought up is the student. And what we have found at KPMG is we are getting the millennials now, and they definitely learn differently because of all the technology they're involved. So I have to encourage us all, including my own firm. We have changed the way we train our folks. Training occurs, knowledge transfers occur 24/7. It doesn't happen just in annual sessions anymore in classroom training. Classroom training is definitely a component of the training, but also it's wrapped with virtual training that our folks are receiving right at the time or close to the time that they need to apply. Everything is a simulation, everything is a case study, and actually we use a lot of the instruction on the virtual side before they get into a live classroom, and in the live classroom it's apply against the simulation. And we also have what we call performance support mechanisms, which is we keep sending down information and knowledge in forms of virtual trainings for different topics as they come up very dynamically. We can't wait for the next session. We have to send it down to them, and they have to receive it. And they also have to apply it on their jobs immediately. So actually, my only point is I'm sure all the universities are changing, the firms, at least I know KPMG is changing, to a continuous learning model and to improve audit quality. The information today is so great. The new standards are increasing at all levels. Regulations are increasing at all levels. We need to all educate our students, our professionals, repeatedly, continuously, through the best known mechanisms.
You're right. Thank you very much, Eileen. Now, we open the time for questions for the audience. If you would like to raise any questions, I don't know if we can have some microphones to the audience, please. Over there, man. Yes. Go ahead, please.
I have 3 questions which you can pick to choose to answer one or all of them, depending on if you think they're relevant. The first one is that you'd mentioned that the new IES 8, which may clarify, I guess, in the standard itself, but that it applies not only to the engagement partner, but also to members of the engagement team. So I just wondered if there could be any clarification now about that, because to my mind, the engagement partner has the overall responsibility anyway for determining what competence is needed on the team and is the one who is accountable. And I find it difficult when a standard applies, just like for the ethics standards on rotation, the recent consultation on that, and whether the rotation rules should extend to other members of the engagement team. And it gets quite confusing. So if it's clarified in the IES 8, the new one, then that would be great. I will see that when it comes out. My second question is, because of determining competence, and especially on engagements which will vary considerably in nature and size of engagement, then is there a view that the supervisory or regulatory bodies of auditors, whether they should be licensing or approving auditors according to their competence for specific types of engagements? And then my last question is, we've got this big jump, it seems to me, from education standards to audit quality. And to my mind, the professional skepticism and values and judgment is crucial, because it doesn't matter how much knowledge you have or education, you've still got to make that decision to apply skepticism and values accordingly. So is there a view about whether those things should be monitored more closely by regulators? Every practitioner probably does some form of declaration as to these things, but should we be monitoring that more closely to ensure that auditors are actually applying the proper values?
Okay, thank you. Eileen, can you answer those questions, please? Or?
Yeah, you're right, the IES 8 is related to the competence requirements for the engagement partner. And the reason why we came to that conclusion, because via the consultancy papers and the exposure drafts and the like, it became clear that it was the engagement partner, regardless of the size of the firm, regardless of whether you're a single practitioner and the like, that is the one common denominator. The ICES went on then to give the responsibility to the engagement partner for the competency of their professionals, and also to some extent to the firms, to make sure that all are competent. But we decided to focus on the engagement partner competences, because those are the competencies that should be in place when they arrive at the engagement partner. And they are standard competences, meaning it's those competencies apply, the competence areas apply to all on the engagement team, but at different levels of proficiency. So one can easily use the engagement partner competencies in order to determine the extent of proficiencies, and also change the verbs for the responsibility to be used against the entire engagement team. So we also put together the learning outcomes, and the learning outcomes also displays the depth and the extent of the knowledge, the understanding, and also the skills that need to be developed through those competency areas. So if your question is, why did we not prepare it for the engagement partner? And you'll notice there's no proficiency level at the engagement partner level, because we assume that they're already there. But because of the demands of the environment, they have to be continually developed and further developed based upon new competences. But you could interpret those competences for the engagement partner as those that would be applicable to the engagement team as directed by the engagement partner. Now, I will tell you that additional guidance will be issued, and it will be issued prior to the effective date, which I said was July 2016, which will get it potentially more into the context of the representatives of the engagement team. Does that answer that question? Mm-hmm.
Joseph, you want to?
I think there was also a question about professional skepticism and whether that should be also monitored by regulators. This element is a state of mind, and by the time it comes to the attention of regulators, probably the damage had already been done. So it would be like an analysis of what went wrong, but instead of waiting for events like that to come up and then regulators to intervene, I think this is an important element that has to be done as part of training, as part of CPD, as part of simulations and exercises where the professional develops the necessary skills to apply, to be in a state of mind of a situation where the professional understands this element and exercise it throughout the engagement. Thank you.
We have another question here. Please, sir.
My name is Professor Edediwo from Nigeria, Association of National Accountants of Nigeria. I had submitted the question, but let me go over it. Dr. Hans and Dr. Bale had mentioned the issue of quality. We know full well that the standards have been well developed, but in many instances, the financial reports are not accepted by the stakeholders because they do not reflect the proper financial content, information content. My question is, what are the qualities of the professional accountant that should make us believe in the financial reports? For example, if you take the case of Enron in the US and the case of Cadbury in Nigeria, it's not a case of not applying the standards. It's a case of how the standards were being applied and who applied the standards. So what are the qualities of the professional accountant that will make us, stakeholders, to believe in the financial reports?
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Bell, could you please...
Yes. Why should we believe in the auditors? Well, I happen to have written an article on the Enron case, and there were certainly ethical violations in that case and a lot of interesting outcomes from it. I have studied this area of earnings management, and I think what it is that cases like Enron, WorldCom, Lehman Brothers, and others that you mentioned are rare. And in every system, there are those that do not follow the system. And if we get to the point where we feel that there's a majority or a large number of people that are violating the system, then we lose faith in that system. But I think generally people have a lot of faith in the auditing profession today because we do have high standards. We also have high penalties for people that violate those standards. And so when there are violations of the standards, they stick out a lot. And one of the things I talk to my students about is how important the auditing profession is that they can go, I work in downtown Chicago, they can go just a few blocks to the stock exchange or to a brokerage office, and they can buy a share of stock in Singapore or Hong Kong or Australia or UK or why can they do that? If you go back to the time of Pazioli, you couldn't do that. You had to have a joint venture. You had to know the people involved. But you can go right today here in Rome and you can buy these companies all over the world without question. And the reason you can do that is because you have a lot of faith in that auditing profession.
Thank you, Dr. Bell. Unfortunately, we don't. You want to add something, Dr. Hans?
I would like to
go
add
ahead,
something.
please.
There's one thing that I will, one remark I will make. That's the professional skepticism of an auditor should be beyond any doubt. And that's not only how he looks to the financial statement, but also his professional skepticism looking to the auditing standards and all kinds of standards. You can't say there are standards, I live up to the standards. But at the same time, you have to see that the standards are applicable in that specific situation. And that's where we can trust the auditor. They should have professional skepticism. You can't train that in classroom. You only can train that by doing the business.
Eileen, please, the last answer, please. Only 1 minute.
Yes, I'm sorry, I'll go as quickly as possible, but I think it's a wonderful question, actually, to close the session, because it brings to light the reason why all the IESs have been written and revised for the year. There had been Enron, there still continues to be frauds out there, and one has to have that question in their mind. So by strengthening the IESs themselves, having assessments on those IESs for the institutes to comply with and the firms and the like, I think will give you greater comfort that there's greater internal controls over the process today, and that perhaps the competencies will be dramatically increased, both at the entry level as well at the professional level, because of this, if in fact they're embraced and if in fact they are consistently applied. I know also in all the firms there is an incredible amount of quality reviews that go on all the time. We review our own work. We constantly are coaching our professionals to excellence. We have a full training curriculum on it as well. But I close by saying it's the IASB and the IAS standards that if they are complied with, if they're followed, you will have more competent professionals performing the job. And that is probably the greatest assurance you can ever have.
Thank you very much, Eileen. Unfortunately, we don't have much more time for questions, but I invite you to approach to our experts as soon as we finish with this session. So I would like to ask you to thank you, all the panelists, for the contribution. I will ask you for a round of applause to them. Thank you very much.